Thank you for listening to Life Improvement Radio. You are listening to a rebroadcast of a previously recorded show.
We're live at the Miami Book Fair, powered by Life Improvement Radio, Authors Corner on the Total Education Network. You can visit my website, TotalTutor.net, for more information. Twitter, Total Tutor, Neil S. Haley, Facebook, all the different areas, and then enjoying the conversation of great authors throughout. And it just keeps going on, Eric. You ready for our next one? You ready to buckle up? And
yes, I am.
Talk? All right. Well, I want to welcome the program author, and it's amazing. We had our conversation a year ago, and then the phone call, and that's what I guess the key component is. Author and poet Richard Blanco. Richard, thanks for calling, man, and I appreciate you stopping by the studio today at the book fair.
Oh, that's awesome. It's great to be here.
Absolutely, Richard. And I guess we went ahead and did our interview last year in Miami. You're a very good poet, and you had some great success, and then somehow you received the phone call. And I'm kind of to tell you the story. When I saw you, and I was watching the inauguration, and I heard, oh, this fantastic poet was part of it. And it was was so fantastic. I said, what was his name? And they said, Richard Blanco. And the first thing I did is I texted Eric and said, Eric, we had him on our show. So basically, that's what we're here to talk about today, and I guess the experiences of when you got that phone call. So take us, I guess, the name of the book first of all, and then take us through that story for sure.
Sure. The name of the book is called For All of Us, One Today, and An Inaugural Poet's Journey. And the book begins, as you might imagine, with the phone call and a lot of the details about that, but more so also a lot of the emotional details of sort of the things that were running through my mind about my family and whatnot, things that don't always come out in media, even as many interviews and dozens of interviews that I had done subsequently after the inauguration. But it's about the creative journey, it's about the spiritual journey, it's about the emotional journey. You know, in many ways, when it's kind of obvious, but it's not always sort of said that, you know, to write a poem, to endeavor in anything creative or anything artistic, involves a lot of soul searching. It involves a lot of sort of an emotional sort of component to it. And I had to ask a lot of questions about myself and about my country and my connection to America. And as an immigrant, what that meant, those questions were very, very important. And so the book details a lot of the sort of the story behind the story. And it also includes the other two poems, because I'm not sure that that's common knowledge, but they asked me to write 3 inaugural poems. So it includes for the first time ever the publication of the other 2 poems that no one's seen. And I wrote the book for, you know, several reasons, but one important reason was to sort of, you know, it all happened so fast, and it seemed like such a dream, and it was that writer impulse to have to record that, to sort of that urgency of making sure it happened, to, as Anais Nin says, you know, writers live life twice, and so it was just to go over sort of the fine details of what had happened and what they meant. The other part is that there's a much greater story than just the writing of the poems, and I think it's a story for all Americans, this idea of how my connection to America and what it meant to be an American changed for me because of the experience of not just writing the poems, but also the whole experience of the inauguration that I went through. And so I wanted to write it for that too. It's sort of an American dream story besides the poems.
Absolutely, Richard. I could imagine that phone call and say, are you serious? Really? And then the preparation involved in it. And I think that it's something that, Eric, I don't know if my co-host has been busy really checking that chat room and everything and all the great people streaming live today. Eric, it must have been amazing, that phone call he had that Richard had, Eric.
Yeah, it would almost, to me, be something along the lines of, hey, is this a joke? You're kidding, right? This isn't real.
That was one of my first reactions. I thought it might have been one of my friends playing a prank on me. And then the other one, then I still couldn't quite fathom what they were talking about. I was like, you mean like come read a poem at the White House? I thought it was some kind of function or something where they wanted to include poetry. And then finally I was like, you mean like Robert Frost and Maya Angelou? And they're like, yeah. And they said something like, well, we were just wondering if you were interested and if you were available. And I said, let me check.
Yeah, you have to sound a little disinterested. Let me check my calendar. Hold on a second.
Well, government is always very, protocol and everything's very proper, and so it was just funny for them not to realize how incredible that phone call was for me at my end.
That's awesome. So, what's it been like since that phone call? What's your life been like? Have you become a overnight celebrity, or what's involved since that?
The first 3 weeks were spent writing the 3 poems. I only had 3 weeks, so that was an intense writing period, and then just getting prepared and all the logistics of everything from CIA clearance to Secret Service fingerprinting to all the logistics, and then finally reading the poem, and then having just such an amazing spiritual and emotional experience through that whole process. And since then, I've just there was incredible spirit that I felt after the inauguration, which was the way that moment connects America with poetry, like nothing in America at that scale. It's just amazing. People hugging me in the street, the thousands and thousands of emails and drawings and gifts in the mail, everything from, grade school children to military personnel to, elderly in assisted living facilities. And it's just amazing to see when people are given a chance with contemporary, accessible poetry that their responses are very, very, very strong and powerful. And so that got me on this kick of trying to keep that spirit alive and trying to keep America connected in that way and I don't know, dare I say evangelize poetry. And so I've been killing myself going around the country reading at all sorts of venues, and the weirder the venue, the more I like them. I've been reading at, for example, at the Northeast Association of Transportation Engineers annual meeting. I have been reading at Keynote at law firms. I've been reading at all sorts of advocacy groups, working with LGBT youth. Everywhere that you can imagine, suddenly the doors for poetry have flung right wide open, and I just want to sort of keep America connected in that way as much as I can. So that's what I've been doing mostly, and in between writing, of course, the account, the sort of little mini memoir, I call it, of the whole experience of the inauguration. So I've been busy. It's I feel like sometimes, like a country singer, I feel like I need to get like one of those big ass buses and just travel with my guitar and my poems. But I love it. I feel what keeps me sane is that I feel a sense of purpose and a sense of mission that keeps all the other sort of hubbub and all the other attention sort of a little bit more at bay. I feel like I have a reason why I'm doing this.
And what's amazing, Richard, is the fact that the story, the fact that you come out not an obscure poet, but somebody that only people that are really understand the book fair fans. Now you've become mainstream, and now you're like coming back to the book fair. And I'm sure that the response, even at the book fair, has been amazing, right? From last year to this year, and then people all coming up to you. And, you were talking to some people, but now they're like, oh, my gosh, Richard Blanco, I can't believe all the amazing things. So, again, you feel like a rock star, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful. A lot of people sort of sharing, many people sharing that moment where they were when they heard the poem, when they were watching the inauguration. Many of them turned on to my poetry because of, obviously, the exposure and complimenting me and just really chatting about some pretty personal and great things as far as their connection to poetry. A lot of poetry converts, people that said, I've never bought a book of poetry in my life and brought all your 3 books. And so I'm turning I think this again, it's this door that's open is turning on people to poetry. But that's what I love about. I think that's what we all, at least me personally, whether at a big scale or a small scale, that's always why I wanted to write. In some ways, is to connect to people. I think that's the driving force behind a lot of artists and a lot of art. Is that idea that let me share my story as a way of connecting with people and let them share their stories back with me. And poetry is especially an interesting genre in that sense. It's still like sort of this sense of sitting around the campfire, and I think it's a way of connecting people. Certainly it did at the inauguration from like I said, all the responses I've gotten from all around the country. So it's a great sort of different feeling for me. But I welcome it. I think it's great, and I think it's great for poetry. And I just want to sort of emphasize that because it's just I wish the inauguration would have a poem every single time. Maybe America would be a little will warm up even more to poetry if we had such events more often.
Definitely. That was actually going to be my next comment to you, Richard, was that it's almost like a high five. You scored one for poetry. We were talking about poetry all day because we've interviewed a couple authors who have put in collections together. And I really think I don't want to say the country's forgotten poetry, but it seems like it's really not as prevalent as it used to be or heavily taught. And now it's kind of opened at least a young child's or, more of the general population's eyes up to, hey, poetry's still here. Maybe I should read some.
Yeah, that's definitely happened. I've seen study plans now built around one today for kids, and it really, the reasons are complex, but I should say they're not that complex. They're varied, but that was also sort of the learning experience that have sort of dawned on me. It's sort of as plain as the nose on my face, or the noses on our faces, and it's the idea that we just don't teach enough contemporary work in school, and so kids are not exposed in an early age to something that's more accessible, or at least that's in the language of their day, that's something in real time, that there's practically a poet writing about every single community, every single region, every single issue, every single ethnicity in America, and yet not too many kids get that exposure to realize, hey, there's a poet who actually lives right down the street, and he's got 3 books, and look, he's talking about my neighborhood, he's talking about my people right here in this community. So I think that's part of the reason that that's happened. I think that's part of what I want to sort of take on more in the future. How can we change or help educators to perhaps teach poetry a little more effectively? Because I think they were taught the same way as well. So I'm not blaming educators. I just think it's more about empowering them and giving them the resources to feel comfortable in teaching contemporary work. And you'd also be amazed, like there's even now I'm getting commissioned to do occasional poems throughout the country. So it's even caught on in a whole other way too. I just finished a poem last week that I presented that I was asked to write for the Tech Awards in Silicon Valley, which is an organization that gives out awards globally for people using technology for humanitarian good, for humanitarian purposes. I read a poem, the Boston Strong poem, at the TD Garden for the benefit concert, and also read a poem at that same poem at Fenway Park at the beginning of the Texas Rangers and Red Sox game. So if that's not totally cool for poetry, I mean, I love it. I think it's totally cool for me, but it's baseball, hot dog, poetry, and apple pie.
So fantastic.
It excites me.
Absolutely, Richard. Where can we find information on you, purchase your book, and learn more about you?
I'd love you to go to my website, which is www.richard-blanco.com, and there's a lot of videos and all sorts of other information of all sort of the fun stuff that's been happening with poetry on the road. But the book is widely available, Amazon, Indie. It was an indie pick for December, so I always like to support that. But yeah, it's wherever most books are sold.
All right, Richard.
A cliche phrase.
Thanks for stopping by. I tweeted you out on Twitter and followed you on Twitter, and best of luck to you. And we'll see what happens next year at the Miami Book Fair. We'll hear another unbelievable story, I'm sure. So best of luck.
And thanks for keeping the word alive as well.
All right, take care. Okay,
take
bye-bye.
It easy.
You're listening to Authors Corner, powered by Life Improvement Radio, live from the Miami Book Fair. And we'll be back in just a moment.
Thank you for listening to Life Improvement Radio. The views expressed by show hosts or their guests are their own and shall not be construed in any way as advice from Life Improvement Radio. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our website. Personal perspectives expressed by the producers, writers, or editors will always be presented as such. Any rebroadcast or retransmission without the expressed written consent of Life Improvement Radio is strictly prohibited. Thanks for listening.